From the moment Damian Blackwood entered the gala, everything about the night seemed charged with an electricity that neither Emily nor Isabella could explain. The room had been lavishly decorated in crystal chandeliers and golden drapes, each detail designed to impress, but all that paled in comparison to the men standing in the center of it all. Damian was not merely handsome, he was the kind of man who seemed to command attention without trying, whose presence could bend the atmosphere around him. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room, calculating, aware, and somehow, even from across the floor, they seemed to lock onto the twins as if they were the only two people who mattered. Emily nudged Isabella lightly with her elbow, her voice barely a whisper over the soft hum of conversation. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Isabella turned to look at her sister, a subtle smirk playing on her lips. "Feel what?" she replied, though her heart was already pounding. Emily gestured subtly toward Damian. "Him. There's something about him. Like he's looking right into us." Isabella's breath hitched slightly, though she tried to play it off with a laugh. "Relax, Em. He's probably looking at everyone like that. Billionaires do it all the time, calculate, analyze, charm, it's their thing." Yet even as she spoke, a shiver ran down her spine. Damian's eyes, sharp and intelligent, had an intensity that made it impossible to look away. It was almost magnetic, pulling them toward him despite every warning their instincts tried to give them. The sisters had always been close, inseparable, even. Friends often joked that they were like two halves of a single soul. Growing up, they had shared clothes, secrets, and even crushes, never seeing any harm in a little harmless competition. But Damian was different. He was not a crush or a fleeting fascination, he was an entirely new world, one that promised danger and thrill in equal measure. The evening progressed in a blur of polite conversation and champagne. Damian moved through the crowd effortlessly, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, but always with a subtle intensity that made those around him feel as if every word spoken was being weighed and measured. And then, almost inevitably, he was standing before Emily and Isabella. "Emily, Isabella," he said, his voice smooth, deep, commanding attention without raising an octave. "I've been hoping to meet the two of you tonight." Both sisters felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and unease. Emily, usually the braver of the two, found her words caught in her throat. Isabella, more cautious by nature, studied him carefully, noting every subtle movement, the slight tilt of his head, the calm confidence in his posture, the faint trace of a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something about him that made her pulse quicken, a dangerous allure she hadn't anticipated. "Mr. Blackwood," Emily finally managed, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "We're honored to meet you." Isabella nodded in agreement, her fingers fidgeting subtly with the edge of her clutch. Damian's gaze lingered on them, piercing and unnerving. "You don't need to be polite with me," he said. "I see far too many people hiding behind formalities. But I can tell you two are different." The word sent a thrill through both sisters. Different. It was a word they had heard countless times in reference to themselves as twins, but spoken by Damian Blackwood, it felt like a revelation. "I'm not sure what you mean," Isabella said cautiously, though curiosity burned behind her words. Damian leaned slightly closer, his presence overwhelming yet intoxicating. "I mean that I don't often encounter people who can truly match the life I lead, or the desires I harbor. But you too," he paused, as if savoring the moment. "I think you might be able to." Emily felt her heart leap in a mixture of excitement and fear. There was audacity in his words, a daring invitation that made her pulse race. Isabella, sensing the same energy, felt a chill run down her spine, her instincts screaming caution even as curiosity lured her forward. For weeks after that night, Damian pursued them with an intensity that was both exhilarating and unnerving. He invited them to private dinners, exclusive events, and luxurious weekend retreats, each encounter carefully designed to test, to tease, and to enthrall. Emily and Isabella found themselves swept into a world far beyond anything they had known, a world of wealth, influence, and power, where every decision carried weight and every word could shift dynamics in ways they could barely imagine. At first, the sisters tried to resist, reminding themselves that he was dangerous, an intoxicating thrill that could destroy them if they weren't careful. But the allure was irresistible. Emily, ever the adventurer, reveled in the rush of being near him, while Isabella, more measured, found herself fascinated by the intricate web of control and strategy he seemed to weave effortlessly around everyone in his orbit. One evening, during a weekend retreat in a secluded villa overlooking the sea, Damian revealed something that would change everything. The twins were sitting on a terrace, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, a soft breeze carrying the scent of the ocean. Damian approached them, a glass of wine in hand, his expression unreadable. "I have something to confess," he said, setting his glass on the table. Emily and Isabella exchanged a glance, wary yet intrigued. "I don't want to choose between you," he continued, his voice calm, deliberate. "I want both of you in my life. Together." The words hung in the air, shocking and electrifying all at once. Emily's heart leapt. Isabella's mind raced, torn between disbelief and a strange, compelling sense of destiny. They looked at each other, the silent understanding between them stronger than ever. "Are you serious?" Isabella finally managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Damian's eyes never wavered. "As serious as I've ever been in my life. I've never met anyone, let alone two people, who could challenge me, intrigue me, and understand me in the same way. You too," he paused, letting the words sink in. "I want to share my life with both of you." Emily felt a thrill she couldn't contain. The idea of such a scandalous, audacious arrangement was intoxicating. Isabella, though still cautious, felt the same pulse of excitement. They had always been inseparable, and now they faced the possibility of a life even more intertwined than ever, bound not only by blood but by a shared connection to a man who defied logic and convention. The decision didn't come easily. Nights were spent in whispered debates, pacing their shared apartment, wrestling with fears and fantasies. Emily's side of the argument leaned toward adventure, the thrill, the excitement, the notoriety. Isabella's side wrestled with practicality, the risk, the judgment of others, the complexities of such an unconventional relationship. But in the end, the sisters realized that neither could deny the magnetic pull Damian had on them, nor could they deny their own fascination with the idea of a life so dangerously alluring. And so, with a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation, Emily and Isabella made their decision. They would marry Damian Blackwood. Together, once the decision was made, everything moved swiftly. Invitations were printed in gold and silver, announcing the union that would scandalize society. The venue was booked, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city, complete with gardens, fountains, and a ballroom large enough to host hundreds of guests. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the identical gowns the sisters would wear to the subtle variations in accessories that would distinguish one from the other. Yet, beneath the glitz and the preparation, a quiet tension lingered. Both sisters were aware that Damian's proposal was only the beginning of a game far more complex than they had anticipated. His charm was undeniable, but beneath it lay a calculating mind, one that had likely considered every possibility, every reaction, every twist that could arise from such a scandalous union. As the days counted down to the wedding, Emily and Isabella felt the anticipation building to an almost unbearable pitch. They were exhilarated, terrified, and consumed by curiosity about what life with Damian would truly be like. Would he be everything he appeared to be, or was there a darkness behind those brilliant blue eyes that they had yet to see? On the eve of the wedding, they stood together in the mirrored dressing room of the mansion, adjusting their gowns and sharing a quiet moment away from the eyes of guests and staff. Emily touched Isabella's arm, her voice low and steady. "Are we really doing this?" Isabella smiled, a mix of fear and excitement in her expression. "We are. And we'll face whatever comes, together." Outside, the world awaited, buzzing with whispers and speculation. But inside, the sisters shared a bond stronger than the anticipation, stronger than the wealth and scandal, stronger even than the enigmatic men who had captured their hearts. Whatever the future held, they knew one thing for certain: their lives were about to change forever. And as the last rays of the setting sun bathed the room in golden light, Emily and Isabella took a deep breath, ready to step into a world of opulence, intrigue, and irresistible danger, a world where love, loyalty, and ambition would be tested in ways they could never have imagined. The wedding day had arrived with a brilliance that seemed almost surreal. The sun rose over the city like a golden promise, casting warm light over the towering buildings and the manicured gardens surrounding Damian Blackwood's estate. Inside the grand mansion, the air was thick with anticipation. Servants moved in quiet precision, adjusting flowers, polishing crystal glasses, and ensuring that every detail was flawless. Outside, a fleet of luxury cars had begun to arrive, their engines purring softly as they carried guests adorned in gowns and tuxedos, each more extravagant than the last. Emily and Isabella were in the bridal suite, a room so opulent that it felt like stepping into a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered sweeping views of the gardens below, the sunlight catching the folds of their white gowns and casting a soft glow around them. They stood side by side, their reflections mirrored in the polished marble, sharing a quiet moment before the ceremony that would forever alter their lives. "Do you feel ready?" Emily asked, her voice low, betraying a mixture of excitement and nerves. She reached for her sister's hand, intertwining their fingers. Isabella took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready as we'll ever be." "But, this is bigger than we imagined, isn't it?" Emily smiled, a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension in her eyes. "Yes. Anne. I can't stop thinking about him. Damian, he's everything we thought, and maybe more. Dangerous, powerful, magnetic." She paused, searching for the right words. "And yet, I feel like I've been waiting for this. Waiting for someone like him." Isabella squeezed her hand gently. "We'll face it together. No matter what happens tonight, we have each other. That's what matters most." The ceremony itself was a spectacle worthy of its billionaire groom. The ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of white roses and crystal chandeliers, each detail sparkling under the warm glow of thousands of carefully placed lights. Guests whispered among themselves, their voices a mixture of awe and scandalized curiosity. The notion that twin sisters would marry the same man on the same night was already the talk of the city, and the event exceeded every expectation. As Emily and Isabella walked down the grand staircase together, their identical gowns flowing like rivers of light, all eyes turned toward them. Damian awaited at the bottom, exuding his usual air of controlled charm and intensity. He smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that sent a shiver of anticipation through both sisters. They descended together, arm in arm, feeling the combined weight of every gaze upon them, yet unable to resist the thrill coursing through their veins. The vows were exchanged with grace and poise. Each sister spoke of love, trust, and partnership, their voices soft yet resolute. Damian's vows, however, carried a sharp edge of audacity, a declaration not only of affection but of ownership, of control tempered with fascination. By the time the officiant pronounced them husband and wives, the room erupted in applause and whispered exclamations. Some faces reflected admiration, others envy, and a few bore judgment, but none of it mattered to the trio standing at the altar. After the ceremony, the celebrations continued into the night. Champagne flowed freely, the orchestra played enchanting melodies, and guests danced beneath the glittering chandeliers. Yet, as the evening wore on, Emily and Isabella began to feel an undercurrent of tension, subtle but unmistakable. Damian's glances were no longer just admiring, they were calculating, assessing, measuring. And when the final hour approached, he leaned in close, his breath warm against their ears, and murmured, "Tonight is only the beginning." The sisters exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of both excitement and apprehension. They followed Damian through a labyrinth of hallways, past quiet corridors and softly glowing sconces, until they reached the grand penthouse suite that would serve as their shared bridal chamber. The suite was breathtaking, a luxurious expanse of polished marble floors, velvet drapes, and ornate furniture. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, reflecting the city lights outside in 1,000 dazzling patterns. But despite its beauty, the room carried an almost palpable tension, as if it were aware of the drama about to unfold within it. Damian poured 3 glasses of champagne and handed one to each sister. He raised his own in a silent toast, his eyes flicking between Emily and Isabella with an intensity that made their hearts race. "Before we begin," he said, his tone calm yet commanding, "there is something you both need to know. Something that will change the way you see this night, and perhaps me." Emily's brow furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. Isabella felt a wave of unease settle over her chest, her instincts alerting her to the fact that Damian's carefully controlled demeanor masked a hidden agenda. Damian's lips curved into a faint, almost predatory smile. "I have been observing you," he said, his voice measured, deliberate. "Not in the way you might expect. Not to judge, but to understand. To see if you are truly capable of handling this life, of handling me, and each other." Emily blinked in disbelief. "Observing us? What do you mean?" Her voice trembled slightly, a mixture of fear and anger rising within her. Isabella felt a surge of protective instinct for her sister, her hand tightening around Emily's as she spoke. You mean, like spying?" Damian's smile never wavered. "Call it what you will. I needed to know if you could endure, if your bond was as strong as it appeared, and if you were ready to enter a life where trust and loyalty are tested at every turn." He gestured to one corner of the room. With a dramatic motion, he pressed a hidden panel, and a section of the wall slid open to reveal a bank of monitors. Each screen displayed footage, moments from the sisters' lives over the past few weeks, captured in intimate detail. Emily gasped, stepping back instinctively. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "You've been watching us?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. The sisters felt a mixture of betrayal and awe, a dizzying combination that made the air in the room feel suffocating. "I have," Damian admitted calmly, sipping his champagne. "Every interaction, every reaction, every decision you made in response to situations I orchestrated. I needed to see if you could navigate the complexities of this arrangement. Marriage is not just love, it is strategy, compromise, and understanding. And this," he gestured to the monitors, "to the evidence of their lives, was my way of testing you." Isabella's mind raced, processing the enormity of what she was seeing. "Testing us? You mean, like a game?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Emily's hand found hers instinctively, a silent anchor in the midst of the chaos. "Yes," Damian replied, his gaze unwavering. "A game, yes. But also a filter. Only those capable of enduring this life, of understanding each other and me, deserve it. And you, both of you, have passed the first stage, whether you realize it or not." The sisters stared at him, a mixture of fear, fascination, and anger coursing through their veins. They had entered into this marriage willingly, drawn by the thrill and allure of a billionaire whose charm was almost hypnotic. But they had not anticipated the depth of his cunning, the meticulousness with which he tested them, nor the power he wielded over the situation. Emily finally found her voice. "So, all this time, it wasn't just about us, it was about you." Her words were sharp, edged with both hurt and awe. Isabella nodded beside her, her mind spinning. You manipulated everything. Every dinner, every invitation, every private moment." Damian inclined his head slightly, a calm, almost unsettling satisfaction in his expression. "Not manipulated. Observed. Measured. Ensured that you are not merely willing but capable. Marriage is far more than a ceremony. It is endurance, intellect, and the ability to trust even when every circumstance challenges it. You too," he paused, letting his words sink in, "you are remarkable. And tonight, you will prove it further." The sisters felt a shiver run down their spines. The wedding, the vows, the celebrations, they were all just the beginning. Damian's challenge had only just begun, and they realized that entering this marriage meant entering a world where love, trust, and power were intertwined in ways they had never imagined. Emily's mind flashed with 1,000 scenarios, each more daring and dangerous than the last. Isabella, though shaken, felt a spark of determination ignite within her. They were not helpless, they were sisters, united by an unbreakable bond, and they would face whatever Damian's tests required. Damian set the champagne glasses down and stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet intoxicating. "Tonight is not merely about celebration," he said, his voice low and hypnotic. "It is about understanding. About testing boundaries, discovering depths, and realizing what it truly means to be with me, and each other." The sisters exchanged a glance, the unspoken understanding between them stronger than ever. Whatever Damian had planned, whatever tests awaited them, they would face them together. Fear was present, but so was exhilaration, the thrill of the unknown, the rush of danger, and the intoxicating allure of a man